Okay, so we have got the lister, which has got an output of 700 RPM. Then we've got the Eaton 7, which has got input and output. Problem is, I've forgot my notebook with all these figures in, so I'm going to go through them, brain melting stuff. So, the input 3600, the output 2150. So that is the hydraulic side of it. So I've got the lister engine, which has got a maximum output of 700. Then we have the Eaton 7, which is an input of 3600 maximum and an output of 2150. So from that, I'm then going to go to the wheel end. Okay, so at the wheel end, I have got, this isn't the actual wheel, this is just a representation, and the wheel is 7-inch on the tread, not on the flange. So I've not measured that. I've measured that. So the circumference of that is approximately 22 inches. So I need to work out wheel speed. So I'm aiming for somewhere between 11 and 12 miles an hour, which from wheel speed, it's quite a bit of maths. I'm just going to work out the maths and I'll be right back. Okay, so using an RPM calculator on the internet. So if I want to achieve 12 miles an hour, I'm going to be looking at a wheel rotational speed of 576 revolutions per minute. So what I've got to do is I've got to get from 1250 down to 576. And on the original gearing setup, which is just like this, on the Eaton 7, I had an output of a 17-tooth sprocket to a 22-tooth sprocket. And then from a 22-tooth sprocket down to a 24-tooth sprocket at the wheel. So at the wheel, it was 24 teeth. And working it out, it had a wheel speed of probably around about 23 miles an hour in that configuration. So what I'm doing is I'm doing away with those 3 gears and I'm replacing them. So I'm going to go to a 12-tooth on the output shaft of the Eaton 7 and a 12-tooth on the output shaft of the 90-degree gearbox. And then I'm going to a 24 on the input shaft there. So from there to there, I've got a reduction of 2 to 1, which brings me down to 1075 RPM. So there, so I'll have 1075 RPM there. And then I'm going to have another 12 to 24. So which will then reduce that again by the same amount, which should bring me down to half of that. So I have a 2 to 1 there, a 2 to 1 there. So reduce that by half again. I am looking at 532.5. So I'm going to 532.5, which on the RPM calculator. So if I go to 532.5, the tide amount of 7, it takes me to 11.1. So that then equals 11.1 miles per hour, which is about what I'm shooting for. Yeah, I'm turning this up to 11, just like Spinal Tap. Using that 3-gear combination, it was running far too fast. Hopefully these gear reductions here will also increase the, what's the word? Tractive force. So it's going to be able to pull weight. In its previous configuration using these 3 gears, it didn't do the job. Also, I will be adding keyways to it because the previous one, it was running on the shaft, and you can see the marring that's happened there. It's absolutely destroyed the inside of the keyway there. So that's going to have to all be cleaned up. On both ends of that, you can see the absolute damage that has been caused just by relying on a grub screw. So those new gears will also get keyed. I have a Woodruff key on here, so that's an 1/8. These are running 5mm keys, and it's just basically just tightening the situation up, and hopefully that gearbox can handle acting as a gear reduction gearbox, because it's only a 90-degree gearbox. Somebody has said that you shouldn't really change the gear between those two. They should be the same, but if it dies, it dies. I'll put another one in. This is purely science, and hopefully it's all going to work. Now, let's get to machining those gears. So there's a bit of a slight side quest. This is an imperial set, and all my holes are metric. So what I'm having to do is I'm having to make some new broaching collars. I just used a piece of mild steel, and then that's going to enable me to drift out my keyway. I've already machined this one off camera. Basically, I started with a a piece of bar, turned it down so that is a nice slip fit inside my hole, and then clock it up on the lathe and turn a slot. Might as well show you that bit. Now there's a lot of pressing going on. It's a lot of repetition here, so sat on the chair makes it nice and easy. Now on every single one I press the boat through 3 times, so each time I then put a shim in behind the broach and press it back through again. So yeah, a lot of repetitive, and being sat down whilst pressing this is making it a little bit easier, and periodically having to step away to knock the broach out from the gear, because just as it's getting all the way through, it gets a little bit tight, so I end up taking it to a vise, just tapping the broach out so I can then come back and attack it again. But yeah, I also ended up taking the first gear to the same size as well, because I couldn't find any 8th key stock. I've only got 3/16 key stock, so I've gone 3/16 on all keys to make them all nice and uniform. So, midway update. I have got keyways. So I've got 3/16 keyways in those two gears. I've got an 1/8 inch keyway in that gear. Now, in there is a 5mm slot, but 3/16 keyway is what I've got. So I need to add a grub screw through to the point of the slot, and I'll do one opposite. So I'm just going to plunge a hole all the way through those gears. And that one, I'm going to put a smaller grub screw in there. I'll do M6. The previous gears have got M8 grub screws in, a little bit on the big side. So I'm going to go for M6. Apart from that one where it's an 1/8 inch key, so I'll probably go an M4 grub screw on that. So grub screws, grub screws, grub screws. The other issue I have is on this, there is a Woodruff key. See if I can zoom you in. Okay, so here is a semicircular hole for a Woodruff key. So I do not have Woodruff keys, because I'd have to make a disc and chop a piece off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mill an 1/8 inch slot. I'm just going to disconnect all this and mill that slot out so it's a straight keyway, which I should just about be able to get in there and slot out what is already there. So next step is take that apart. Okay, so the next mission I've got to deal with is sorting this lever out. Because currently it is purely relying on the clamping force carried out there to operate the lever. But that comes loose all by itself. What it needs is it needs a tapered hole to match that taper. And it's got a keyway, so I'll probably put a grub screw through the keyway because I need to be able to change the gearbox so I can change my direction. So I need to figure out what that taper is and then go from there, I think. But yeah, that's junk. I need an accurate lever where I can go forward and reverse a lot easier. Let's make it happen. So I'm going to need a boss. That is probably 5/8 long. So 5/8 from the bottom side of it. 13.66. Does that equate to anything imperially? Just a shade of 1732ths. Yeah, so what's it like at the top? It's about 5/8 at the top. I think what I'll do is I'll start at 1 degree, test fit it, then go from there, see what happens. Caution, photosensitive viewers, look away now. And that's the welding done. You can look again. Now, as I try to demonstrate how the lever is working now, this basically sums up this day's worth of work. I have got all the gears done and fitted. This lever modification has worked out nicely. The next step will be actually trying to get this on the engine. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe. And I will look forward to seeing you in the next episode of this Lister rebuild. Thank you. Goodbye.